All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Silent Mode Cafe. May the 4th be with you. This is a very interesting roundup. We have a lot of news. A lot of really interesting things have happened. I'm going to hand it over to Vivek. Vivek is going to give us a bit of a roundup. Then there are a couple of very interesting topics we're going to follow up with after that. But I won't leave you hanging. Let's get to it. Vivek,
right.
How are you today?
Good. I'm doing great. May the 4th be with you. One of the coolest seasons I've been catching up on is Andor. If you haven't seen it, Andor is really good.
I'm behind. I've been traveling so much, man. I've been trying to get back into watching something cool. You know, with all these conversations we've been having, one of the things I want to do is go back and watch Mr. Robot. Absolutely one of my favorite shows, specifically around hacking.
Yes.
So realistic. But
that was a great show.
Be with you. You hit it on the nose. Let's do it.
So last week we discussed Marks and Spencer Cyberattack. So as part of that conversation, apparently the numbers have come out based upon the impact. So their losses were up to £15 million per week. And they only dipped £750 million in market value.
That's it.
That's it. And apparently the group that did it, or at least that's what we're being told, is Scattered Spider, is the name of the notable group, the hacking group that caused that. The Bad Boys, right. So that's just a continuation of what we discussed last week and what you're seeing. The second one, we have a couple of more, hacks that have happened again across the pond. Harrods was threatened. I guess if they start with one, they attack the other one. Face cyber threats this week, which prompted system lockdowns. I guess it's like a chain reaction. They go with one, then they go to the second, and the third, the fourth. Though the name of the hacking group hasn't come up, but Harrods is a really famous retailer out of London, so that's another one. And then South Korea Telecom jumping to Asia. One of the largest telecom operators disclosed a customer data breach, which triggered an 8.5% stock drop for them because of that. So raising concerns about telecom infrastructure security
for SK Telecom.
Telecom. And then SK Telecom is we have been talking about this, just the threat to infrastructure, which is not only in Asia but also in the US and what the impact that can have. It's very real. And then some other ones, another grocery store co-op data breach, which I believe is again across the pond. It's the same hacking group behind Marks and Spencer's. That data breach impacted 6.2 million records. So apparently, I guess grocery chains are in the news for being compromised and getting hacked. And in the U.S., Cobb County in Georgia got hit by Kill-In ransomware. That's the name of the gang. It's called as the Kill-In gang. And they're responsible for breaching Cobb County systems, and they're threatening to leak 150 GB of sensitive documents, including employee files and autopsy reports. So that's there. And then in the U.S., Verisource Services, I guess it's an HR firm called Verisource. That got impacted, and then that included leaked names, addresses, social security numbers, and employment history of 4 million individuals. And, of course, continuing on the whole Texas side of the house, Texas health contractor called Maximus, working with the Texas Health Department, improperly accessed medical data of over 61,000 residents.
That's crazy.
So this is the roundup across the world. I'd love to get your thoughts, Salah.
Yeah,
as you see, as we're hopping across each continent, and you're
it's
seeing what's
mind
happening.
blowing. But just to put it all in context, so funny enough, my probably our biggest fans are my kids, and uh, my daughter was. We were listening to this. My daughter and my son were listening to this last week's podcast Roundup. Uh, and my son is very interested, asking questions. I asked my daughter, "What do you think?" And she said, "Well, I just don't know what it means." So it'd be interesting what other people think, right? And the reality is, she said, "Wow, I mean, there are a lot of numbers. We're throwing out a lot of numbers in terms of few million here, 1 billion there, all these records." And she asked, she said, "Does it matter? I mean, how much does it matter that my data is out?" Um, and I'm just thinking about it from a context perspective. I don't know if the average person who is not in the tech community feels like this matters to them or not, or how much it matters. But here's how much it does matter from my view. A lot of these companies that have been hacked recently are offering services to protect you. So, because some of these leaks are going to come, especially your PHI. So PHI, we use that word quite a bit. Personal health information, right? Some of your PHI data, Google got a hold of, and insurances and other organizations that want to know, pharmaceuticals that want to know about people's health, got a hold of that information. And now, when there are background checks about you, now when you're trying to submit for a new insurance, now that data is out there. So it really, really, really does matter. And we're just trying to create awareness around it. Those are
Yeah,
my thoughts, Vivek. I have a
yeah.
lot of specific thoughts about some of these hacks, but I think we'll get into it here in a bit.
I mean, honestly, your daughter raised an amazing point. A couple of billion here, 700,000 here. Like, what's truly the impact to an individual? And I think
Right.
it boils down to uh, when your data is exposed by a breach and they offer identity protection services. That essentially means that they're afraid that someone is going to impersonate you as a person and then start using your name to potentially create bank accounts and profile and start taking loans in your name, at least in the US,
Mm.
thereby impacting your entire credit history and your individuality. And the amount of time it will take you and effort and stress it'll take you to get it all back is enormous. And it's an uphill mountain. And there's so much of paperwork and process involved. So it's better to be safe than
Yeah.
sorry.
Prevent
When
it. Try to. Or
prevention
have
is
insurance, have protection, right? Do the
right,
things that you're supposed to do.
right. And I think there is as we become more, in the progression of life, as we collect more assets, the more exposure we have, right? And I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have as our children get older in terms of prevention and also the impact that it can have. And you rightly pointed out, Sila, it's insurance,
Yeah.
right? It's insurance of what you know of safeguarding you know your financial and physical assets.
Yeah. That's great. Hey,
Yes.
okay. So to continue with this topic, right, we have privacy and surveillance news, right? So DeepSeek AI, which the dust is settled for the most part on the Chinese catching us taking over the world with AI at a lower cost and doing, etc. But they're back in the news because it looks like DeepSeek allegedly transferred personal data of South Korean users to servers in China.
And this is, I guess, through what their chatbot, I believe, right? They have a chatbot.
So it looks like if I look at the detail, it's from their chatbot. So as users are interacting, telling it, I'm going to play out scenarios because I have no idea. Okay, but as I interact with my chatbot and I say, "Hey, my friend Vivek is saying this about me. How should I deal with it?" No, my personal therapist. No, seriously, people do divulge a lot of personal data.
Right.
I hope no one, after listening to our podcast on AI, no one is divulging critical data, credit card information, health information, etc. But in any case, whatever those conversations are, the problem with it, it's regulation, right? As U.S. citizens, we don't want other countries to have access to our information. Similarly, South Koreans don't want another country to have access to their personal information. One of the biggest fears DeepSeek people had around DeepSeek when it was launched is, hey, the Chinese are collecting your data. So this is not looking good for DeepSeek.
Yeah.
Right. Not a good look for DeepSeek. Other news in privacy and surveillance, Microsoft is back in the news. Excuse me, Google is back in the news. I think we're going to get to Microsoft today as well. But right. Google is back in the news. And Google patched a 2-decade-old flaw in Chrome that allowed websites to infer browsing history through CSS styling of visited links, right? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So
give us some of that technical jargon breakdown. What is CSS styling of visited links, and what does this mean?
So I think what they're essentially trying to say is that if you design your websites in a specific way, using the CSS format, there was a flaw, and I have to dig deeper into this as to its ability to look at your history.
Right.
Which is like if you pass a specific HTML tag or a CSS tag. Yeah. So
that's what it means. So let's just stop there. I think, what it means is it's a vulnerability that allows it allows people wanting to understand where you've been visiting. It's a vulnerability to allow them to peer a little deeper into your daily behavior as you're browsing sites on Chrome.
Right. And so what you could possibly do is create a website with that code, with that CSS code. And if people would come to the site, you would know their browsing history.
If you use that CSS.
If you use that CSS code. So let's say you have a new web page, like, ABC or acme.com, and it's using a specific CSS styling with the intent of just capturing your browsing history. I think that's the loophole that they've closed.
I see. Interesting. 20 years later. Good job.
20 years later.
Fantastic, man. Hey, they have...
better late than ever,
I'm not going to say. But you have to stop me before I start bashing some of these companies.
No.
But let's just give Google kudos for 20-year later patch. All right. Tell me a little more about emerging threats and cyber trends, Vivek.
Yes. So there was news this week that there was obviously a massive power outage in Spain and Portugal. I talked to a friend in Spain, and he said he hadn't had power for 18 hours because of the massive power outage. And he said it was an amazing digital detox, which is okay. I guess that's one way to look at it.
All right. Yeah, there's a silver lining.
There's a silver lining. And I love when people have silver linings like that. But now, while the officials cite a grid failure, investigators haven't ruled out a coordinated cyber attack.
So, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, right? You guys know me by now. I don't. However, for crying out loud, how do you not first and foremost think this was a cyber? Look, your infrastructure is either crap, and I have third world countries that don't have these type of outages.
Yeah.
Or Spain, Portugal, someone is practicing on your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Anywho, let's leave that at that. Because that's an hour-long conversation.
Right.
But 60 million people out for 18 hours. And they're trying to investigate whether this was a cyber attack. Who cares if it was or not? I cannot wait until next week, because without a doubt, indubitably, we will have more data.
We'll have more data on this. Yes.
But there's going to be some serious, and I'm surprised I haven't heard those numbers yet, and they're probably out there. I just haven't looked. But there's going to be some serious implications on the economies of Portugal and Spain as a result.
Yeah, I mean, lack of electricity, obviously, there's significant impact.
Yeah,
on the economies. The other piece is Iran repelled a major infrastructure cyber attack. That's what they are claiming to their industrial infrastructure. As you're aware, there was a large explosion at a key shipping port last week, which I think killed 100 plus people. And then that also fueled cyber sabotage suspicions. So it goes hand in hand now that if there is something wrong that happens, that the cyber attack angle is not ruled out. As you can see from these two reports, one, of course, the Spain and Portugal, where there was a massive power outage, and then also with Iran repelling infrastructure cyber attacks after the big explosion at a key shipping port, which was in the news. So those are the two main cyber trends of this week that I wanted to highlight.
Man, I have to comment on this.
Go for it. Go for it.
Iran has been at the receiving end of some pretty amazing attacks. And I think I would be remiss to not mention Stuxnet when we talk about Iran. Right.
Right.
And we're not going to dive into what Stuxnet is. I think there was an entire movie made about this called 0 Days.
0 Days, I think, yes.
Right? 0 Days. If you're interested in this, please go check it out. I worked at the company that exposed this, that caught this hack. By the way, just for the sake of conversation, because I've been listening to quite a bit of news, and there's some serious China bashing or Chinese national bashing happening in the US. And just keep in mind, the person who exposed Stuxnet and some of our biggest researchers in cybersecurity, working for some of our biggest cybersecurity organizations, are Chinese. So please be careful when you do that. They are Americans. What I do want to say about this, however, is that Stuxnet opened the door to a new generation of malware. It's an amazing attack. Stuxnet was just amazing. I mean, this attack, and I'll give you the 30-second overview for those who might be interested. This attack jumped what is called an air-gapped system. So most of our infrastructure, most critical infrastructure, specifically around nuclear power, is cut off 100% from the internet. So that cutoff from the internet is called an air gap. And somebody was, and this is where social engineering comes in and human error comes in, someone brought in a USB key into this air gapped environment, unleashed this powerful this malware called Stuxnet. It took over the devices. Details you'd have to dive in. However, highly monitored, as you can imagine. This is a nuclear facility, highly monitored both digitally and from a physical security cameras everywhere. It had started creating issues with the centrifuges, making them spin at dangerous levels, and it was it created a facade to both the physical as well as the digital side that everything was okay. Cameras looked okay. the administrative consoles looked okay. But centrifuges were blowing up left and right. So I'll leave it at that. Incredibly interesting attack, like amazing attack.
And this was
so fun to look into it. I'm not condoning nation attacks. I'm not condoning any of it. I don't have any opinions politically on any of this. But from a tech perspective, what an amazing attack.
Yeah, the attack was towards the Iranian nuclear program.
Yes.
That's what the attack was targeted towards their Siemens centrifuges, which even Siemens, I believe Siemens was the vendor, wasn't even aware that there was an issue in their software. So it's
crazy.
And the way it got caught, like you said, by Americans, right, working for the company that you were working for.
That's right.
It's and bringing that report out. It was just the beginning of this whole thing that every time there is either a massive power outage or an infrastructure attack, because of Stuxnet, one of the key areas of suspicion was it a cyber attack? Because
last week, I think, Vivek, you know, we reported on the fact that China admitted they had infrastructure attacks against the U.S.
Yes.
So this is welcome to the world of cyber warfare, right?
Right.
So on that topic, moving forward, there's some trends happening. Look, Vivek and I have this conversation about how much do we bring in the world of security vendors helping nation states as well as large vendors such as your banks and all these companies that we're reporting on having cyber breaches or attacks, ransomware, whatever it may be. How much do we report on them? And this past week, I was at a conference called RSA Conference, huge conference, over 40,000 people attend this from all walks of life, right? They attend this, but it's the largest cybersecurity conference in the world, where most organizations who are in the cybersecurity world show up and they showcase the latest and greatest that they have, and they share that with the world and with other vendors, and in the hopes that customers will come in and they can showcase, right, your typical convention / conference. Lots of education happens. Tons of education happens at this event. But there's some news that happened there, right, Vivek? What was some of the news that came out, and then I could give some commentary as well.
Right. I think there was a big conversation on AI and cybersecurity and the impact towards that. Do you want to highlight some of the things that you saw there?
Actually, that's a great point. So AI, try not to get to use too many acronyms or language that doesn't mean anything, but AI, think of it from an agent perspective, right? Agentic AI. It has the function to do things. Well, the foundation of most code is static. And most cybersecurity vendors utilize what is a traditional form of coding. Agentic, using large learning models that Vivek and I have discussed in our AI podcast. Well, these learning models can also improve processes and context when it comes to cybersecurity. So imagine in a format from a cybersecurity perspective that I want to understand, is this sensitive data leaving my organization? Well, agentic AI, as you can test this out on your own right now, you take a letter that you've written, you put it into your favorite chat GPT bot and ask it, is there sensitive data or sensitive information in here? And it will tell you. Well, many cybersecurity organizations right now, if not all of them, are integrating AI into their platforms. And I haven't seen such a fervor in startups for a long time. I don't want to say how long, for a long time. And all of them were I think the top 10, were they technology winners or advancements in or startups, were all AI based.
Yeah. And
all AI based.
I've seen that similarly across the other parts of the AI spectrum. I think it's just essentially now a must-have feature in any
It's
application.
a must-have function.
Right. It's become optional to must-have. If you don't have it, then you're behind the times. You're essentially dinosaur, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, look, it improves your code. I think just recently Satya and Mark Zuckerberg both admitted that 40% of their organization's code is now written. 30 to 40% of their organization's code, Meta as well as Microsoft, are now written with AI.
Right.
Right. AI is foundational to be able to respond to attacks, and
yes.
and it's being used on both sides. So there's the good, bad, and the ugly of it.
Right.
We're trying to keep up with the bad actors. Bad actors are utilizing AI to correlate data and understand specific things about users and organizations, and they can everything from deep fakes, which is an incredibly hot topic, by the way.
Right.
From deepfakes to scams, which I guess deepfakes is foundational to scams, to ransomware, and then vulnerability tracking and taking advantage of vulnerabilities.
Of open systems.
And the ability to utilize on the defensive side large AI models to correlate and understand what's going on from an attack. Oh, this is an attack. I'm seeing things happening across my hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of devices around the world, and it looks like this is stuff that has existed in cybersecurity for quite some time. The correlation, but the ability to correlate and quickly respond is something that you absolutely is not new, but is much better with agentic AI than the traditional approach.
It's the two C's. It's correlation and context.
Correlation, context, and response.
And response, CCR.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the context piece is just getting more and more mature, which adds, like you said, both for the person, the red team or the blue team, the person who's attacking or the person who's defending.
Yeah.
It gives, those tools are available to both sides of the fence. So it's just going to be fascinating to see what comes off it, depending on which side of the fence you are. So that's super cool.
It's very cool.
Oh,
by the way, can I shout out to one organization? I had a great conversation. They also have a podcast. Maybe we'll have this conversation with them. But Black Girls Can Hack is an incredibly cool organization. I met some of the people in that organization. I didn't realize they also have a podcast. So we shared podcast information, and hopefully one day we'll both do a podcast together.
That's amazing. And then other things, healthcare breaches continue to surge. We've been talking about that. I think that's the industry trends and policy. Salah, thanks for sharing your, how RSA was. 40,000 people. That's quite a lot.
Over 40. I think it was almost a 10% increase from last year, and last year was just over 40,000. So this was like mid 40s. Wow. 44, 45, somewhere around there. Amazing. This is also the post-COVID world of everyone beginning to travel and combine that with the hottest topic in tech, which is security. Sorry, NVIDIA. But it's all AI, right? With security.
At the end of the day, NVIDIA wins. You're running on NVIDIA's roads, so it doesn't matter.
Hey, folks, that is the wrap up from the news. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting because we talk about hacking a lot. And today we talked about three or four. I just have three.
Well, we have three, but it might be good for you to go through the top 10 list.
Well, let me bring up the three because I don't think all of them are in the top 10.
Okay, let's start with the top three and then the 10.
Because I'll tell you, the first one I'm going to talk about is Scattered Spider. So Scattered Spider They were part of that couple of recent hacks against major corporations. Mark and Spencer, we just talked about, MGM Resorts. They're huge on social engineering. Let me preface all of this. The way the industry knows who these hackers are is all these hackers have a methodology behind them. They have a process that they utilize. They have strengths. They have strengths, whether it's network security, social engineering, right? Specific tech security, such as scattered spider. They tend to be really good at SIM swapping, as an example. So when we look at, there's this thing called the MITRE attack chain, and in there, there's hundreds of little degrees that we can see. And once we combine this, there's like a thumbprint that we figure out, right. 90% confidence, 80% confidence, it's this hacking group. It's Iran, it's Russia, it's scattered, it's anonymous, it's this. They have a methodology to them. That's how we know. They don't come out with a flag. It's not like,
sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Right.
Sometimes they want to
advertise.
They want to put their fingerprint on it and say, well, look what we did. And Anonymous is very famous for that, right?
Right, yeah.
But Scattered Spider was in the news. They gaining access through IT help desk impersonation and then deploying ransomware. So these are social engineering hacks, right? Yes. Utilizing existing systems to learn more about the organization, calling support, asking questions, starting to figure out more and more, and mapping out the organization from the inside out, and understanding how the hack happened, or how to hack an organization. Another one that we mentioned today was Dragon Force, and Dragon Force is very specific to Malaysia. So it's a Malaysian hacking group. They typically target global businesses as well as government entities, right? And their hacking methodology tends to be website defacement, denial of service, and a lot of hacktivism, right? Hacktivism such as Anonymous, which is an anonymous hacktivist group around the world. Another one I think we mentioned today was Black Cat. And Black Cat has, they all have some code names. We don't need to get into that. But Black Cat is interesting. And this might be surprising to a lot of people. But Black Cat is a service. It's ransomware as a service. You can subscribe to the service and utilize that service to attack an organization with ransomware. And there are a lot of security services out there. There's denial of service. Denial of service as a service. Man, that just totally jumbled my brain up. There's organizations out there where you can log in, give it a few IP addresses, pay, and launch a denial of service attack against your favorite website or your favorite organization. Really interesting. So they, just like you jump on and you sign up for your Spotify service, right, and start listening to music, there are hacking services you can sign up for. Please don't do that. You will definitely be under a lot of watch lists, and you are not anonymous when you do it. Okay, regardless of what you think. What do you think? Should I continue to the top 10? I'll do a quick rundown, or should we save that for another day? Let me do this. Let me run down through the names, and if people are interested, let us know that you're interested, and I will definitely do a deep dive into all these hacking groups. And matter of fact, I'll dive so deep into them. I'll tell you some of the hacks that they've done, how they do them, and we might be able to pull some videos out and show you some of these hacks in progress, or some of the methodology that they utilize in progress.
Yes.
But one of the most notorious and famous organizations out there, and so utilize, and a matter of fact, I mentioned Mr. Robot he's actually, that series has used some of the same methods by this hacking group as well as others to showcase these cool hacks that they do. Hold on, I don't want to make them sound good. I know I said the cool hacks that they do. Let me just leave it at that. I'm just a technology nerd, so please don't think I'm a fan of these guys in any way. The methodology Mr. Robot uses is cool, not these organizations. Okay, let's go on. The Lazarus group, North Korean group, right? North Korean group, huge on cyber espionage. What's a very notable hack that they've done, Vivek?
We discussed that Sony in our first episode. Sony hack.
Right?
Yeah, that was a big one.
Conti, linked to Russia, never admitted to be Russian, but very much linked to Russia. Conti, CONTI. You don't need to Google them. So Conti,
Yeah.
huge on ransomware attacks,
Right.
specifically on healthcare and government. Very high profile leaks. If you want to know, we can talk about them. Scattered Spider, we did just mention.
Discuss them, yeah.
Revel, right? Major, again, you're going to start seeing a bit of a trend. Major ransomware attacks around the world, right?
Right.
Such as Kaseya, Apple suppliers, horrible organization. All right, then there's nation states where the state, tied to a country, advanced persistent threats, APTs. Their APTs are typically numbered. So there's an organization called Fancy Bear, APT 28, an organization called Cozy Bear, APT 29. And if you're getting a bit of, you're seeing some bear go over here and there, it's because it's Russia. It's a state-sponsored espionage.
Right.
APT 28. Most famous for their Democratic National Convention hack in 2016. By the way, I have worked on security for Democratic National Conventions back in 2004. That was a long time ago, but maybe we should chat about that one day. And then Cozy Bear, APT 29, very famous hack that's actually, we still don't know the end in sight of that hack.
Yeah.
The SolarWinds hack. Probably one of the biggest hacks in our history.
In recent times, yeah.
In recent times.
Yes.
Absolutely crazy. There's now, these aren't all nation states. Some of your teenagers are pretty darn advanced, folks.
Right.
Lapsus, LAPSUS with a $sign, wouldn't be a teen.
Teen run extortion group.
It's a teen run, a teenager run extortion group. Have breached Microsoft, Nvidia, Okta, some of the biggest names in the industry. Right. They were behind it. So as you watch some of these movies that showcase teenagers doing it, and matter of fact, again, that show I mentioned also uses a little bit of the Lapsus methodology. They're definitely all teenagers. And then it wouldn't be a hacking group if they weren't dark. So then there's Dark Side.
Right.
Right.
We've talked about them. Too.
We talked about Dark Side. That's right. And then Dragon Force.
We talked about them too.
But another hacktivist. Lots of hacktivists out there. I know I've talked about my thoughts on hacktivists. Hacktivists, right? US, I think they're like Dark Side, US based organization. I'm not quite sure. Anonymous is a worldwide organization. We would be remiss to talk about the top 10 hacking groups and Anonymous not be included. Again, a hacktivist group, decentralized. No one knows who they are. There's not a central head behind them, right. a location, a geo. But they point their denial of service guns, right? They take over servers. They generate a lot of denial of service attacks. They bring down websites. They deface them. And very famous for having almost like a public relations arm, because many times they will record videos of why they did it, the reasoning behind it,
Right.
and sometimes they give warnings that they will attack, they will create ruckus if you don't back off or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and they're not ransomware at all. It's more social
They're not
justice.
ransomware. They're very much social justice driven,
Justice,
right?
yeah.
But that's it. It's exciting stuff. This was a long podcast, but we had a lot of interesting hacks. I swear, last week when we ended our podcast, I was thinking, man, we talked about so many things today. What are we going to talk about next week? And here we are. We had more to talk about this week than we did last week. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, Salah. Thank you for
Thank you,
everyone
everyone,
listening.
for joining Silent Mode Cafe. We will see you next week.